Sometimes a job offer seems too good to be true, and sometimes it is. Story 1. I was desperate for cash, so when the flyer fluttered onto my windshield, night custodian needed, remote site, $2,500 per week, I took it as a sign. The address was a single line of numbers that led me to an old concrete complex on the edge of town, its windows blackened like blind eyes. A thin man in a gray jumpsuit met me at the gate, his badge reading C. Rowan, facility manager. He gave me a key, a flashlight, and a stack of logbooks. "The job is simple," he said. "You patrol the corridors, note any irregularities, and make sure the power stays on. No one else works here after midnight. You'll be alone, but you won't be unheard of." He smiled, and his teeth caught the dim light. Something in the way his mouth twitched made me uneasy, but the contract was signed in ink, thick as blood. The first night I walked the halls, feeling the building settle around me. The air smelled of dust and something metallic like old blood. My flashlight cut a thin cone through the darkness, illuminating flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed in a rhythm that reminded me of a heart. I checked the control room, a bank of gauges, a wall of monitors showing empty corridors. All the readings were normal. At 2 a.m., a soft, low hum rose from the basement. I followed it, the floor vibrating under my boots. The door to the storage area was ajar, a thin sliver of darkness spilling out. I pushed it open. Shelves lined the walls, each one packed with boxes labeled "Specimen, Do Not Open." I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but the job was to note irregularities, so I wrote it down. Door ajar, boxes sealed, cannot identify contents. The hum grew louder, now a steady thrum that seemed to pulse through the concrete. I descended the stairwell, each step echoing like a drumbeat. At the bottom, a room stretched before me, its walls lined with glass panels. Inside each panel hovered a translucent shape, vaguely human, their eyes dark voids. They floated, suspended in some viscous amber, their limbs curled like the shells of dead insects. I froze. The panels were marked with dates, 1953, 1961, 1978, each one a year older than the last. A handwritten note on the nearest panel read, "Subject 12, awake, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, activation pending." I stared, heart hammering, as the hum synced with my pulse. A sudden click behind me made me whirl around. The door had shut itself, the lock clicking into place. The flashlight sputtered, dimming to a feeble glow. In the darkness, a soft voice whispered, barely audible over the hum, "Welcome back, caretaker." The realization settled like a stone in my gut. The logbooks I'd been filling out were not for me to record anomalies. They were a tally of us, the specimens, each entry a confirmation that another had been added. My own name was on the first page, ink fresh and still wet. I turned to leave, but the hallway stretched on, endless, each door opening onto more glass cases. The hum rose to a deafening roar. I fumbled for the key, but my hand closed on nothing. The last thing I saw before the lights went out was my own reflection in the glass, eyes empty, skin pale, the faint outline of a tag pinned to my chest. Specimen 13. Story 2. I told myself it was just a gig, a way to pay the rent before the winter blew through the city. When the flyer fluttered onto my mailbox, night watcher needed, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., no experience required. I laughed at the cheap graphic of a rusted lantern. The address was a nondescript brownstone on the edge of the industrial district, the kind of building that seemed to swallow the street light and spit it out again. The owner, a gaunt man named Mr. Hargrove, met me in the hallway with a clipboard and a key that smelled of oil and old paper. "Just a simple watch," he said, his voice a whisper that seemed to echo off the peeling wallpaper. "Sit in the lounge, make sure nothing leaves the building after midnight. If anything goes missing, you'll be the one who notices." He handed me a thin leather chair, a small lamp with a green glass shade, and a notebook. "Write down anything odd," he added, "no matter how small." I settled in, the chair creaking under my weight. The lounge was a relic, dusty sofas, a cracked fireplace that hadn't seen a log in years, and a wall of clocks, all stopped at 2:13. I turned the lamp on. Its light was amber, soft, and it made the dust motes float like slow-moving fireflies. The first hour drifted by in a quiet hum of the building's old ventilation system. I sipped stale coffee and stared at the notebook, the blank pages waiting. At 12:07, the hallway lights flickered, casting long shadows that stretched across the hallway like fingers. I blinked, and the sound of soft shuffling whispered from the stairwell. I wrote, "Faint footfalls, possibly mice," and tried to convince myself it was just the old building settling. The clock on the wall struck 1. The temperature dropped a few degrees, and the lamp's glow seemed to dim on its own. I heard a low, guttural sigh from somewhere beyond the doorway, a sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. I pressed my palm to the notebook, feeling the paper tremble beneath my fingers. At 1:23, the silence shattered. A door across the lounge, one I had never noticed before, creaked open. A thin sliver of darkness poured out, and an inexplicable chill seeped into the room. I stared, heart pounding, as a single, translucent hand reached in, palm outstretched, as if pleading for something. I blinked, and it was gone, the door snapping shut as if it had never been there. I wrote, "Unexplained hand, door that wasn't there before." My hand shook, but I forced myself to stay, to keep watching. The night stretched on. At 3:44, a soft humming began, like a choir of insects trapped in a jar. The humming grew louder, resonating through the floorboards, each note a low, mournful vibration that seemed to pull at my thoughts. I realized the humming matched the rhythm of my own breathing, as if the building were inhaling with me. When the first gray light of dawn seeped through the cracked windows, the humming ceased. I stared at the notebook. The pages were no longer blank. In thick, spidery ink, a list had been written. 12:07, footsteps. 1:23, door. 3:44, humming. The final entry was dated yesterday, written in a hand that was not my own. "Do not leave. They are still watching." I looked up, and the lounge was empty, except for the green lamp, now cracked, its light leaking a sickly phosphorescent glow. In the corner, the cracked fireplace had ignited on its own, a thin wisp of black smoke curling upward, forming a shape that looked eerily like a face staring back at me. I tried to stand, but the chair held me in place, as if fused to my skin. The notebook slipped from my trembling fingers and fell open to a new page, already filled. "Welcome to the watch, dear. You've been here longer than you know."